All right, we're live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nick Sonnenberg. I'm excited to be here, and we're going to be talking about how to maximize your team and organization's efficiency for the next hour or so. I've put together some slides. We have plenty of time for Q&A, and I want this to be as helpful as possible. So put your questions in the chat, and we're going to get through. I want to maximize the time to answer your specific questions, but I also want to walk you through the frameworks that I've developed over the last decade, working with a variety of different industries, team sizes, so on and so forth. So my background, just to know a bit about who I am. So I wrote a book called Come Up for Air, and that really is the playbook for how you run a high-performing organization. If you think about all the new ways of work, all the new tools, and this is not even talking about AI, this is even before this AI boom a couple years ago. There's all these new tools that have come to the market in the last 10 years. You've got Slack, you've got Asana, you've got Coda, Notion, Zapier, N8N, all these things. And now obviously you have ChatGPT, you have Claude. So there's all of these tools at your disposal to run a high-performing organization. And what I've found in the thousands of companies that I've worked with over the years, there's no playbook or training. When you hire someone, if you think about it, maybe you go over vacation days, insurance, maybe if you're lucky, the core values of the business. But there's nothing around, hey, at this company, we use these tools and we use them for these purposes. And this is when we use them and this is how we use them. None of that. So you hire someone, ultimately hoping that they increase capacity, that they help you achieve your goals, work on key projects, etc. But a huge amount of their time is just purely wasted because of a lack of efficiency and a lack of coordination and efficient collaboration amongst the team. And so I got really obsessed about solving this problem. And again, the name of the book is Come Up for Air. I firsthand know what it's like to drown in work, which is why I called it Come Up for Air. Before I got into consulting high-performing organizations on efficiency and writing this book, I was a quant in finance. I was a high-frequency trader. So I've always been in this space of thinking in terms of automation, and I've been doing AI for over 20 years when I was doing that. In that space, literally nanoseconds, microseconds could mean millions. And I lived in Asia, so I used to actually, India was one of the markets I traded. And when I got out of trading and got into entrepreneurship, the company that I built was a freelancer marketplace, was the first iteration of Leverage, which is my company. We do different things now, but we grew really quickly. Back then, a bit more than 10 years ago, tools like Trello and Zapier were really new. And I got really obsessed about how to connect all these tools together to build a really robust mousetrap, so to speak. I was always really obsessed about how all these tools can maximize efficiency. And the company grew very quickly in the first year. We grew to over $1 million of revenue in the first year, 150 people on the team, which sounds impressive, but behind the scenes and under the hood, we were losing a ton of money. We were losing about $500,000 a year. We got almost $1 million in debt. And to compound the issue further, out of the 150 people and maybe 500 clients, only maybe 5 people on the team knew who I was, and maybe about the same with the clients. I really was trying to keep myself kind of the behind the scenes guy, and then I had a business partner that was the front of stage person. And one day we're having coffee and he taps me on the shoulder and he just says he's out. And he doesn't give me 2 weeks or 2 days. He's out in literally 2 minutes. And I'm holding the coffee and I'm thinking, holy crap, this is bad. We might go bankrupt. And within 3 months, we lose 40% of revenue, team, clients. I mean, we were as close to bankruptcy as possible. And it was during this period, even though I was really focused already on all this efficiency stuff, we got ahead of our skis. We really prioritized this revenue growth, but we grew too quickly, and there were some foundational problems that we had with the core business model and the way we operated. And when you get to a certain size, all of your time is, now you have to fulfill this stuff. So you don't have the luxury of building a stronger foundation. So it just like it takes money to make money, it takes time to make time. There's all those parallels with time and money. Time is money. We've all heard that, but it's really true. It takes time to make time. Sometimes, saying the word time a lot, sometimes you have to take a step back and invest, not money, invest your time to build some of these automations or fix some of these foundational issues or clean up the way that you project manage. And that's an investment. It takes time to do those things, but it will yield a return on time. Like once you do it, then maybe you're saving an hour a week for the rest of your life, and not just you, but your entire team. Maybe you do another thing. Maybe it's 5 hours a week. Again, not just for you, but the entire team. So I'm really obsessed about not individual productivity, but team productivity, organization productivity. But during this moment where it was on the verge of bankruptcy and I'm working 16-hour days, there's just no time to work on that foundational stuff. If the house is on fire, you can't be thinking about, redesigning the living room and painting the living room. Even though that's nice, you have to prioritize putting out the fire first before you can go and think about what new chairs you want upstairs. So one day I just sat down and I was like, okay, I'm never going to fix this issue unless I create more time for myself. And I sat down and I was really deeply thinking at a high level, what's happening here? It was like death by 1,000 cuts. There's a leak, probably multiple leaks in the bucket. But I did this time audit and I was like, where's all this time going? Because by the 16 hours, it's like I didn't even put a dent into the problem. And I broke it down into 3 key buckets. And things started turning around really quickly for the company once I started focusing on these 3 key buckets. Then people started reaching out, asking me to consult them. So I got to work with Tony Robbins, if you've heard of him, or poop spray companies like Poopery, or Ethereum, like cryptocurrency. And what was amazing was these 3 buckets that were helping turn my company around. It was helpful for one of the world's top coaches, or a large cryptocurrency company, or even a multi-$100 million a year poop spray company. And then the light bulb went off in my head and I was like, well, this seems to work across different sizes and industries. All these tools are relatively new. Maybe the opportunity actually is helping organizations roll these tools out and maximize the team's efficiency, increase team capacity, ultimately increase revenue per team member, and allow you to generate even more revenue with less headcount. So I really got clear on that. And then this led to writing a book about this framework. And now what I do, which is consult and run a operational efficiency consulting and training firm. So that's my quick background. I'm going to share some slides and walk you through very quickly that framework. And then I'm going to also intertwine some AI, how you can apply AI to each of the buckets in the framework, and leave plenty of time for Q&A. Sound good? Okay, let me share my screen. Oops. Okay, one second. Do you see this? Hem, is this good? Okay, I think it's good. Okay, so high frequency trader, worked with a bunch of companies of all sizes. If you're interested in the book, that's the URL to get it. There's a bunch of free resources and bonus materials on that website. And then also, if you're interested in efficiency, and if you've heard of Jay Abraham, he's probably the highest paid consultant in the world. He's over $100,000 a day. To work with him, we have a podcast where we interview CEOs and we do a live consult and we problem solve and try to figure out how do we maximize revenue and maximize their efficiency. So how do we increase revenue, decrease cost in some out of the box clever ways? So Yeah, I'm going to walk you through the framework. And ultimately, if you roll these things out, I've seen very conservatively, you should be able to save at least a day a week. Sometimes now with AI, it could be multiple days a week, long term. But there's some quick wins that you could do right away. So I want you to leave with some practical quick wins after today's conversation. At the end of the day, everything that I think about is maximizing not ROI, back to the finance and investment term, but ROT, return on time. So what can we do? What can we invest that maybe takes an hour of time, but might yield 15 minutes a week? But 15 minutes a week is like an hour a month or 12 hours a year. So over the course of a year, that's a 12-to-1 investment. Maybe there's other things you could do where it's a 5-hour investment and then you're saving 5 hours a week. That's a 50-to-1, right? 5 hours a week, 250 hours a year, 5 hours initial investment, 50-to-1 return on investment. So like right now, like if you're investing in the stock market or real estate, you're happy with 10%, 20%, like 30% is amazing. Some of these things you might be able to get like 50x return, literally. So some of the things I'm going to be sharing is probably the best investment that you can make. If you generalize investments, not just to financial markets and real estate, but also to your time, which arguably is the most valuable asset that you've got. Now with AI, it's easy to create little web apps and calculators. So like one of the things that I was able to do in 5 minutes or so was create this calculator, and I can share it with you guys if I can drop it in the chat. But it took me 5 minutes to do this. It's pretty cool. You could put number of employees, the average hourly rate, I don't know, whatever you want to do. And then you could just say, okay, if I invest, depending on when we work with clients, one of the things that we do is figure out what's going to maximize the return on time and where should you start? Should you fix this first? Like maybe the thing to fix is email, then it's Microsoft Teams, then it's automate this process. So, maybe it takes 5 hours to do one investment, you save 20 hours after that. Maybe the next month it's another 5-hour investment and that you project to save 15. So you could type all the numbers in, and then at the end it builds this like pretty cool visual and it shows you, okay, in terms of labor, it's going to invest this much. You'll break even at month 2, and the return on investment. And again, like this took me 5 minutes to build this type of thing. But I used a tool called Manus for that. There's Claude. The point though is think in terms of ROT for your team. Oops. That's can you guys see? Okay. Let me just make it not as big of a screen. All right. So we don't have time for the full game, so I'm just going to give you the punchline. I like to ask, what do you think are the 3 biggest time sucks right now in organizations? Think about it, your organization, but more generally, what do you think for any organization? What are the top 3? So I'll just give you a second to kind of look at this list and in your mind, think to yourself, what would you bet are the top 3? Scavenger hunt is how much time you waste looking for something that you can't easily find. Was that in an email? Was that in a text? Was that in Slack? Was it in, is that in a SharePoint file somewhere? So these are the most common that we see, but if you had to guess the top 3, the number 3, just to go in reverse order, is that scavenger hunt. And on average, what we find is about 10 hours a week is wasted in searching for something that's not easy to find. I like to, on average, plus it makes the math and the visual easier, assume a 50-hour work week. So 10 hours is 20% of people's time just wasted on stuff that they don't like doing. It's not adding value for the company. It's searching for something that's not easy to find. At the end of the day, if you had to summarize the core concept of my book, it's all about finding information fast, not sending information fast. So it's a complete mindset shift. Right now, if you think about it, you as an individual want to just get stuff off your plate. Maybe it's end of the day, you want to get home to your family or your friends, you got something else to do. So you just cut corners and you do things as fast as possible versus invest the time to put it where it belongs. And that extra time on the front end to put things where it belongs makes it a million times faster to find it tomorrow, next week, etc. So what we find is when you give people a framework and they spend the extra time to put things where it belongs, you can really cut this down almost to zero. So instead of 20% of time in scavenger hunt, you get it down to 6. Okay. The next big thing is meetings. Meetings are huge. Meetings can, I'm not saying don't have meetings, they're really important, but I don't like inefficient meetings. And there's things that you could do right now to make the meetings more efficient. Oftentimes, you have too many meetings because you're lacking better structure and organization. So you have to have a meeting so you can get the updates because you don't have another place to see the updates, which you should. Okay. So what we find is about 25% of the work week is in meetings, and you cut that down at least to 10, probably more, through some of the techniques and tools and AI that I'll share with you. So you get it from 25, say, to 20. Okay. But the number one is email. And if you think about it, this tool alone is the oldest tool that you're using. Some of these new things, ChatGPT and Slack and Asana, they're all new. But Outlook and Gmail, some people maybe are still on Yahoo or Apple Mail, but email is something you've been using for decades. And it's if you have to kind of isolate what tool is consuming the biggest percentage of people's time in the workspace, it's email. And what we find is it's around 30% of people's time is spent in email. Like, in what world do you spend that kind of significant percentage of resources on something, but you give absolutely no training to your team on how to use this thing? It'd be like giving someone a driver's license and not having them like read the manual of the rules or practice. It's like you hire them and then you just, go and spend 30% of your time, and we're not even going to give you any tips and tricks on how to spend that 30% properly. So I've developed a framework, and now I'll show you an AI tool. I'll give you a chance to interact with it, but you can cut this down in half easily. And then I'll show you this AI tool that I've built. Like, you can get this down even more than 50% pretty quickly. Okay, so as you can see though, there's some additional space here in the pie chart. So those three things accounts for about 3/4, right? 20, 25, 30. So 75% of the work week on average is those three buckets. Okay. Now we see that there's admin stuff that needs to happen, helping to find a time and schedule and coordinate other miscellaneous admin. Now, you probably are missing certain tools. Like, a lot of companies are missing a project management tool like an Asana or a Monday. So we want to be fair. So right now that would be probably a 0. If we work together, or if you read my book and you want to roll it out yourself, you probably need to add some new tools, and that'll take time. But at the end of the day, as it relates to return on time and allocating resources efficiently, at the end of the day, all we really care about, all you should care about, is this green space. This 13% is on average how much time you and everyone that you hire and everyone currently in the organization, that's the percentage on average that is spent on high value, impactful work, stuff that really drives achieving goals, and stuff that is high level and taps more into their unique ability. Okay. If you minimize all this slippage and you operate more efficiently, you can easily get that to 40%. So you can triple at the very, 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 very conservative, you can triple the amount of high value work that your team is doing. So even doing some of these things, even if it's saving 10 hours, you could also look at it from the lens of, I'm tripling the amount of green space for this person. The average hourly rate of someone going on a scavenger hunt, like when you pay people, you're paying them for all of their efforts. That's a blend of green and non-green, right? But if you think about it, the value that they're providing you when it's green is like 10 times more valuable than the value that they provide when they're searching for a document that's disorganized, right? So just making up numbers, maybe it's worth, a few dollars an hour when it's a scavenger hunt, and maybe it's worth 10, 20, 100, whatever the number is when it's the high value work. That's what we really want to maximize. They'll also be happier working there if it's higher value quality work. I'm not just making up these numbers. Asana every year does a survey, like a deep research project, and they find that over half of people's time in the workplace is on work about work, inefficient meetings, email, scavenger hunt, all the things that we just mentioned. Okay. So I want to just go a little bit deeper into those three buckets, and then show you some strategies and frameworks and tactics of how to make it a bit faster. Okay, so the biggest time suck was email. Okay, and I've developed this framework called RAD. It stands for Reply, Archive, Defer. And that's what we teach in the book and to our clients of how to manage email. And again, email, it's something everyone thinks they've got a good system. You folder everything, you mark unread, whatever it is. I'm sorry to tell you, but the foldering and the marking unread isn't the most strategic, efficient way of doing it. There's some better ways. There's small tips and tricks, settings, snoozing. I don't have time to go through all of it today, but the marking unread and foldering is probably the worst strategy that we see. And now with agents and AI, you can even take it to the next level. Okay. How much time and how many times in a week do you get some message? Either it's an email, a Microsoft Teams message, Slack, text. Hey, I just want to make sure that you saw my email, right? It happens all the time. And if you're already drowning in work and behind on email, getting more emails to make sure that you're seeing emails doesn't help you. It just adds more work to your plate, and the person that has to write it doesn't want to write it either. They write it because they're not trusting that you've got a good system where things don't slip through the cracks. You've probably lost their trust at some point in the journey working together, because not necessarily it's your fault. It's because this wasn't a priority and taught during onboarding or continuous education in your company. So trust starts breaking down, which has culture impacts, but it also has productivity impacts. So how do we avoid that? Well, one way is this RAD framework. Every email, there's three things you can do. You can either reply, so deal with it now, be done. Archive. Another problem that we see is people delete emails. You don't need to delete emails. Again, you might be thinking to yourself, I disagree with all of this. If I have more time or if it's in Q&A, I can go deeper. But you don't need to delete anything. You have so much cloud storage. Archive it. You only have so much brain space every day to make decisions. If you're getting hundreds of emails a day, if every email you have that extra decision to delete, where deleting requires more brain, it requires more brain processing, it just slows you down. So if you just kind of completely get rid of the thought, I'm not going to delete, kind of like Steve Jobs just always wore the same thing, one less decision. The fewer decisions you make on stupid, meaningless things, the more, the less brain fatigue that you'll have, and the more clarity you'll have to make better quality decisions on the ones that really matter. And again, you have so much cloud storage. The only difference is if you delete, you can't search anymore. Archiving, you can still search. Once every 10 years, if you run out of storage, go and sort by the biggest files, delete the top 5 that you don't need, and then you're good for another X number of years. Whew. And then the last part, the D, is defer. Most people don't know about snoozing emails, and it's so useful. There's so many emails that you're marking unread that's your reminder to deal with it, but it's missing the context. Some things maybe you want to deal with in a week, some maybe in a month, some maybe next Tuesday. When you mark unread, you have no way of knowing which one's the Tuesday, the next week, the next month. So when you defer it, it leaves your inbox and comes back on the date, on the sooner of the date that you snoozed it, or if there's an update to the email thread. That's absolutely critical. We teach that your email is just a to-do list, like any to-do list, but it's a to-do list that other people can add to. Um, so it's important, just like you want to get through your to-do list, you want to get to inbox zero. You've probably heard that term before. So this framework really helps. There's advanced settings. There's some rules to set up. There's this RAD. There's some keyboard shortcuts. There's about a dozen things that you want to be thinking about. And when you start stacking them all together, it can change your life and change the productivity of your company. Of everything that we do, this one is by far probably the highest ROT, return on time investment. Dan, we worked with, and in just a couple of hours, the guy's saving 9 hours a week, right? Like, it's insane. So like 9 hours a week, that's 450 hours a year that he gets back to spend with his wife, his kids, think about strategy, whatever he wants to do. But now for the rest of his life, he has 450 hours back. Not just him, his 20-person team, each of them have 450. Imagine what that does to your company when all of a sudden you're gifted 450 hours a year to do stuff with. You can now make progress on that backlog of projects. You can not have to work till midnight. Whatever you want to do with the extra time, that's on you. I just want to make sure that we're freeing up as much time as possible for whatever you want to reallocate that time with. Okay. So I mentioned this agent. I'm going to show you at a high level how it works. And then if you want to interact with it, I have a QR code that you can scan in a second if you want to interact with it. But I got an email. Maybe you've heard of this company, Mind Valley. So Vishen runs it. He wrote this email. I'm curious how your email agents work. And what's cool so the difference between what I've built for this email agent, and actually it's becoming a separate company, standalone, this email agent, because we're going to start customizing email agents for businesses. The difference though between what I'm building and like what you might get in Gemini or Copilot, if you think about AI integrated in email right now, the shortfall is it helps you with grammar. It writes a long or short, concise, formal. So it's like length and tone, but that's not super valuable. What we're customizing for people is it connects to your knowledge base. It connects to your data. It connects to your CRM. It takes all this rich context into account. Any email that's ever been written with anyone on the team, any call recordings, any deals that we've done, any notes, looks and scrapes LinkedIn, internet, all of this stuff. So then we have context. We know the brand and tone guidelines of the company. We know the core offers, how sales objections work, all of this stuff. We know the interests of the person. So now, in this case, Vishen was a new contact. We didn't have years of data, but still we're able to get public information on him. And so it wrote this back, fully automated with AI. Here's what we're really working on. Then it tells him about these agents that I'm mentioning right now. And then because it was able to scrape the internet and look him up, it understands kind of what he's interested in because he's done some posts about it. And it wrote that automatically back to him. And it's getting better by the day, this stuff. There's a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the most important thing is ChatGPT 5 or when 6 comes out. Those make marginal improvements to the quality, but the most important is context engineering, where context engineering is the quality of the prompts that you're putting into the AI and all the knowledge that you're feeding into it. And they're both important, but arguably you could have the best prompt, but if it's not connected to all the call recordings and all the data that we've got, even the best prompt in the world is not going to produce a really good result. So you need both. You need context, which is the data, as well as the prompt. Okay. Um, so at a high level, I'm going to show you a video of this is a tool called N8N. It's a AI automation tool. And when we get an email, it's a bunch of agents interacting with each other. So the email comes in to an executive assistant agent, calls a sales agent, calls an email agent. The email agent is checking knowledge base, back and forth, interacting with each other, working in sequence. And so what happens is we get an email, it triggers, it fires off from the trigger of the new email. We use HubSpot, so it goes in, looks up and does some stuff in HubSpot, goes and does data enrichment, scrapes and scans LinkedIn, other data enrichment, looks up the person in Perplexity, calls a bunch of other agents, and then emails the person back. You can decide if you want it automated fully or writing a draft. And so what I've done for this group right now is I've fully automated it. And so if you want to test it, you just have to scan this QR code. It'll pre-populate an email directly to me with a certain subject line. And when we get the email with that certain subject line, we know that you've come from this group, and it'll automate an email. And it pre-populates, but you can write whatever you want. You could ask any AI question, any efficiency question, and the agent's going to write you back a custom email for whatever your specific need is. Okay. Number 2 is meetings. I'm going to speed it up a bit because I know I want to get to Q&A. There's AI tools for meetings. If you think about the cost of meetings, the frequency, the number of people, the length. So really only have a meeting if it's required. There's a bunch of AI note-taking tools. They're great. We've tested all of them. They connect to your CRM too. So if you're using any of these, it'll sync to your CRM, which is really important because if you ever want to go to the contact record and see the summary, ask questions, you can do that so much easier. And then we've connected this to the AI agent, so it uses that information for the emails. You can also use AI to help you prepare for an email. So back to the Vision example, when I was meeting with him, I was able to ask Claude, help me prepare for the meeting. We're using something called MCP, which stands for Model Context Protocol. Don't have time to go too deep into it, but it allows you to connect your AI tool to third-party tools. We've built our own MCP, which is what connects to all of these agents that we've built. And then when I'm preparing for this, it automatically is going to call various tools. Notice I didn't have to say, go to the knowledge base, go to the CRM. It knows to do that. So it goes to my knowledge base, it goes to the CRM, and it's able to pull all the information that we've got. That information's reused for the email agent, but it can also be reused to help us prepare for a sales meeting. So it looks him up and it figures out what I should talk about, like what he cares about, what we've interacted with before, strategic talking points, conversation starters, all of this stuff. It makes it so much faster to help me and my sales team prepare for meetings. Okay. Number 3 is scavenger hunt. And I mentioned this before, but the name of the game is really to completely change the strategy with how you think about efficiency. And rather than everyone optimizing to send information fast, rather optimize to retrieve information fast, right? Rather than sending, just passing a hot potato, how do you pass a baton? If you think about your personal life, the way you do laundry, the fastest way to do your laundry would be you take it out of the dryer and you just shove it in a drawer and then you're done. That's the fastest way to finish your laundry. But for the most part, what you do is you invest the time, not spend, it's an investment, and you spend a little extra time and you separate socks in one drawer, your underwear in another drawer. You do that not because it's the fastest way to do laundry, but tomorrow when you need to get an outfit together, it's much faster to get the outfit together, right? So it's the same thing with how you run your organization. You have this digital chest of drawers that you work with a group of people in. It's important that everyone understands what's in each drawer, right? It's a collaborative drawer. So there's all these new tools. What are the drawers for these? When should you use each one? How do you use each one? So that's the purpose of the framework that I developed. That's the core framework in my book. So CPR is the framework. And the 3 buckets that you have, no matter how big your team is, no matter what industry you're in, you communicate with people, you require planning. So there's tasks and projects and work that you do. And then you have resources. That's knowledge, your SOPs, standard operating procedures, your processes, your database, your all of that is what I consider to be resources. So you have 3 major buckets, and there's different technologies and tools for each of these buckets. Okay. Within communication, there's personal communication. So right now, if you're texting with your team, I would, for the most part, encourage you not to. I would keep email for external. So if you're emailing with your team, I would stop that too. And then you have internal communication tools. So Google, Slack, Microsoft Teams. Each of these, even if you don't leverage, no pun intended, because that's the name of my company, but even if you don't leverage all of the power of these tools, the automations, the channels, the third-party integrations, just by having rules and standards and people understand where to go for each type of thing, like they know to go to Microsoft Teams if it's internal, they know to go to email if it's external, you're already helping reduce the scavenger hunt time by quite a significant amount, because at least they know what tool to open. A big problem that we see is people don't even know what tool to open in the first place. Okay. So planning, if you think about it, where do all the tasks and projects live? A big issue right now, and most people fall into this bucket, maybe you do too, but a lot of delegation and task management happens in communication. You're emailing your team to get this project done by Friday. You're texting them to do this task for you. Different tools have different functionality and purpose. Communication tools are great to communicate, like, hey, welcome Nick to the team. He's going to help with this. But they're terrible for work management. You can't click a button and know what got done last week, what's the status of this project, who's working on what. So different tools have poured billions of dollars into solving different problems. And so you might as well leverage all of that investment and all the rich functionality to solve some of these core issues. And it's a balance with any organization. You don't want to have 1,000 tools to manage, but at the same time, you don't want to have email be your Swiss Army knife that's doing everything. You're kind of like hurting yourself for no reason there. You need some minimum amount of tools for the things that you're doing day in and day out, many hours a week. Okay. And then you want to store your company knowledge. Yeah. You don't want to be at risk that someone leaves and you don't know how something's done. And it's also building assets. If you ever want to sell your company, how you do things, having a turnkey company, both is going to maximize revenue per team member, but also increase the enterprise value of your business. Prompts, investing in a good prompt or an AI agent or a custom GPT, that's intellectual property. That is going to help your team work faster, but it's also an asset that if you ever want to sell your business, that it increases the valuation of your business. Okay. Save time, reduce risk, new ideas, building assets. I'm not going to get into this, but I've automated how I do LinkedIn posts, and I've automated an AI agent to get analytics, study other people's analytics, create a custom standard operating procedure for how I want my LinkedIn to look. And then now it takes me 30 seconds if I want to do a LinkedIn post. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but I'm able to get analytics. Like I would probably have to pay thousands of dollars to someone to do this, fully automated now. I'm able to go and scan how other people in my industry do things, reverse engineer, their best practices. Every month I give an updated 45-page standard operating procedure customized to, how it's optimized for me and my type of business. Okay. So that 45-page SOP is attached to a custom project. And all I have to do is say, write me an article about this, and I get a LinkedIn post optimized with hashtags, with formatting, everything. So where to start? You want to leverage AI and you want to maximize ROT. And you still, I know I'm talking a lot about technology, but you still need people. You can't get away from people. And a little personal update on me, and then we'll move to Q&A. But a month ago, I had a call with someone, this guy, Matt, and he randomly runs Team USA for a new sport called chess boxing. You do a round of chess, you do a round of boxing, back and forth until you checkmate or knock someone out. Not because I'm extremely talented in either. I've never actually fought before, but there's no one in the US on the team in my weight and age category. I'm in masters because I'm old now, above 40. He offered me a spot on the team, and he was like, well, why don't you come to the World Championships in September in Serbia? So a few weeks ago, I committed to doing this chess boxing fight. Again, I suck. Like I'm just learning how to do this stuff, but I've got a great team. So I've got a health performance coach, Donald, I'm working with. I've got some of the top chess players in the world helping me. I live in New York, so I'm playing with the hustlers. That's JP. This is Cornbread. So, and then of course, I'm still using some AI to get better and analyze how I do things. And again, I'm still learning, but I'm getting better each day. So you can follow me if you're curious to see how I do in that match in a few weeks. Hopefully I don't get too hurt. And again, that's the QR code for the email. That's my personal links for social. And I think we got about 20 minutes or so now for Q&A. Hem, you there? Hem, do you want me to just read these, or are you going to read them? Okay. All right. Should I read these off, Hem? All right. I'm just going to read from the top then. How to stick to the Pomodoro technique if there's too many distractions as the leader of the team. Well, that's a long one to answer, but matters what the distractions are. Some people like time blocking their calendar. I really recommend just turning off all notifications. Unless you're in some industry where replying within 2 minutes really matters, or 2 seconds. If it can wait a few hours and no one's going to die because you're not like a surgeon or an air traffic controller, turn off the notifications. If you ever read the books like Deep Work by Cal Newport, it takes like 15 minutes to get back into a flow state if you're taken out of a flow state. So you wanna really minimize that. Okay, I hope that answered your question. You talk a lot about tools and systems, but often the biggest barrier is a founder identity being tied to being busy, especially in India. How do you get high achievers to detach their ego from busyness? Look, I don't mind people being busy as long as the busy is on high value work. So oftentimes they're busy on the stuff in that 50% that's not high value work. So to me, it's not a matter of being busy or not busy. It's how much time are you spending on high value work versus low value work. And that's really, I think, all you should really care about. Okay, what's the most counterintuitive type of busy work you've seen disguised as strategic in companies? Rarely, I think meetings is something that people identify as strategic, which maybe out of an hour, maybe 30 minutes might be, but like the other 30 minutes could have been some pre-work, Um, could have had better moderation. Maybe you're not documenting the decisions and the action items. So I think meetings have a huge opportunity to be more to be more useful. And a lot of people think that they're absolutely critical, which they are, but maybe like you didn't need them so often or so long. Okay. Um, As AI accelerates workflows, what kinds of hidden busy work do you think AI might actually create rather than eliminate? Well, some if the AI hallucinates, um, you could argue it's busy work to figure out like why it did it. But I don't view that as busy work. I think that's going to actually start becoming more and more of people's jobs. So if you've ever heard of QA jobs, quality assurance, it's usually historically used in the context of software development. But I think um, your people on the marketing team, sales, et cetera, I think a lot of their roles are going to shift to having AI agents do a large part. And then they're going to be analyzing the results and figuring out, hey, this could have been better, or why did it do this, and figuring out why, and then optimizing the context and the prompts. So I don't consider that busy work, but I do think that that's going to be uh, a large percentage of people's time in the future. Can you share a time when your own obsession with optimization actually backfired, where a system over optimized and hurt the team? Well, I think that if you if you start with automation out of the gate on something and you don't optimize or even stress test, do you even need to do this thing? I think you could waste a lot of time building stuff and then you find in a month you're not even using it. So I think you really have to be clear on, is this thing going to actually be useful? And then if it is deemed to be useful, not overbuild the first version. So maybe maybe you want something that's going to be an AI agent with two-way text message, but maybe at first you could just send a link to a type form and have people fill out some structured form. And it's 10 times easier and it's a good V1. Next question. Most systems aim to reclaim work hours. How do you see these principles applying to personal life, family, all of it? Like I use Asana, not just for work, but for personal, email is this isn't about work-life balance, it's integration. Like you use email for personal. You've got tasks and projects for personal. So the same principles and even tools I'm using in work and in personal, and I apply the same principles and frameworks for both. You're advising Fortune 10 firms and founders alike. Where do you see the biggest gap and how elite companies versus startups handle busy traps? Honestly, if you're a smaller company, it's an advantage because you have less bureaucracy and you can just move faster. Sometimes with a big company to get approved of a new tool could take months or years. So being being a smaller company oftentimes is an advantage because you don't have a lot of that red tape. Also, the bigger the company, typically the more meetings, which takes up more time. All right, tools and automation help, but ultimately humans are emotional. What non-tool interventions, rituals, narratives, culture hacks do you think make the biggest difference in escaping busy work? Um, well, I think everything that I talked about and today, I think aligning your team on when and how to use a lot of these tools, uh, that does help with the busy work. What non-tool interventions? I think I think that having rituals is important too. Like maybe every Monday you have a meeting about this thing. Um, so you want to have some level of rituals. If you don't, uh, you know, people would advise core principles, principles, and core values. You probably want to have all those things. You want to align people on what success looks like and give them goals that are easy to track. So all the basics, and then for culture stuff, there's tools like Lattice, Culture Amp, 15.5. Again, I'm going back to tools, but those are ways to do pulse checks and make sure people are happy and doing what they should be doing. What's the most dangerous belief of productivity you've seen founders cling to? Mm, I, I think that I think that evaluating someone's contribution and impact to the company based off of how many hours you see them physically sitting in an office is the wrong way of managing. And I think it's almost like a lazy approach because it most likely, if that's how you if that's how you're evaluating people, it's because you haven't done this type of exercise of sitting down and aligning on what the goals are, what success looks like, and having a good way to track it. And so if you don't have that, then the only way that you can kind of like really like evaluate is like, hey, does Nick leave at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? Which at the end of the day matters way less. Wouldn't you rather me leave at noon every day, but you gave me some big goals and I've hit all the goals versus I leave at 10 o'clock at night and yeah, I haven't even made a dent in the goals that we aligned on? How does busy work change shape as a company scales? So as companies scale headcount, things get exponentially more complicated. Um, and I didn't show this graph, it's in my book, but every person that you add adds exponential complexity. So the more people, the more opportunity there is for information to get lost, forgotten, disorganized. The alignment is way harder the bigger you are. So that's why I'm so passionate about maximizing revenue per team member and increasing revenue without increasing headcount. How most people, no one wants, none of you want to hire more people. What you want is you want more capacity, so, or more skill set. So you're hiring people in order to gain more capacity and more skill set because you need more capacity and more skill set to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So at the end of the day, it's not more people. You want skill set and capacity. People is just a strategy to do that. But what we've talked about on today's call is you've got technology and AI and other tools to also help you with capacity and skill set. So at the end of the day, when you hire people, you have to pay salary, recruiting cost, onboarding, and it adds this complexity. So I would hire as a last resort versus a first. How do you introduce systems without making people feel like cogs in a machine? Well, what's in it for them, right? You sit me down and you say, hey, Nick, you're super talented, and we notice that you're only spending a fraction of your time on the stuff that really is adding a lot of impact. What are the parts of your day that you love the most and like the least? Oh, you don't like going and searching for documents that's disorganized. You don't like spending your whole day in meetings. You don't like spending your whole day in email. Well, what do you do like? Well, oh, you only spend 15 minutes a day on that stuff. Well, how about we figure out a way to start reducing all the time on the stuff that you don't like that's also not adding much value to the company so that we can work together to give you a better work life experience, you to work on things that give you more joy, tap into your unique ability. And also, frankly, it'll accelerate our ability to give you a promotion because you're adding more impact to the business versus spending all this time on stuff that doesn't impact the business. What's a personal habit or ritual that gives you back more than any software ever could? Um, well, I really think focusing on health and sleep and working out, if you're not mentally and physically fit, um, you're gonna, this is all a marathon work. So you need to also prioritize your personal health. How do you apply your frameworks to parenting, friendships, or personal life? I think I already kind of talked about that, but uh, I use a lot of the same tools um, to manage both, and block your calendar. If I need personal time to study chess for chess boxing, like I'll put it in the calendar and not do a sales call or a client meeting at that time. What's the most unpopular productivity advice you stand by, even no one likes hearing it? Hmm, I don't think that there's anything like wildly unpopular that I say. I think that most people on the email stuff, when I start telling them to stop it with the folders and the marking on red, that's probably the main thing that we get pushback. But I haven't had anyone at the end say that they don't like it 100 times better. What builds forward momentum? What are the new tangible indicators of productive day when the old indicator was simply a full calendar? Mm, I don't know if there's any new stuff. Like a lot of the things that I think that they're just core concepts that regardless of technology hold. If I'd be looking at revenue per team member, I'd be and again, you could use technologies like 15.5 and every week um, do a pulse check on the team. But at the end of the day, you should set goals with your team and track progress on goals. You should have some type of check-in to see that people are happy. So you want to are they hitting their goals? Are they happy? And then revenue per team member should probably be one of the core things that you're looking at. And it doesn't matter if there's chat GPT, 16 uh, in the future. I think that those are three things that you'll always need to look at. How do we create a culture that defaults to action and ownership instead of defaulting to discussion? What's the phrase or mechanism to use to encourage someone to just do the thing? Um, well, if it defaults to discussion, it maybe means that there's like a gap of clarity in terms of who owns what. Um, so there's probably some deeper like cultural issues or maybe clarity on role and responsibility on those things. Um, and maybe you haven't empowered them to make decisions. So it's a balance. You don't want to micromanage people if they mess up, but at the same time, you want to teach them what the right way of doing it. So if you micromanage too much, you'll disempower them and they'll lack confidence to make decisions and then require approval for every single thing. So that's a balance. What's the single biggest predict a team will backslide into old habits of endless communication loops? I think text and email just because it's so fast, and if you're busy, you want to you don't want to. It's 8 o'clock at night. It's really a compelling offer for someone to just do what's fast in the moment versus spend the extra 10 seconds to put it in the right bucket. How do you design systems that scale with your business but don't make you feel like a bottleneck? Um, well, if you've designed a good system, it should be also minimizing bottlenecks. Um, with the exception if it's such a complicated, intricate system that you fire off a webhook in your CRM that then goes and calls one agent in N8N that goes and fires off. And it's like this really complicated mousetrap, but that's probably an indication that it's not a good system. But you want to document stuff and minimize how much risk you have of someone leaving. What's your personal test for deciding whether a task is genuinely valuable or making you feel busy? Well, is the task aligning with goals that we've aligned to? And is it something I enjoy doing that taps into my unique ability? At the end of the day, you have to respond to people. You can't avoid some of the stuff that's busy. It's just part of the job. So you just have to make sure that you're doing it as efficiently as possible. What's one thing founders refuse to delegate but absolutely should? Mm, I don't know. I think there's not a consistent answer for that. Is there any way to measure these hours we are saving? It's subjective. I mean, there's tools like the time tracking tools, rescue time. There's things you could plug in, but you could also just experiment blocking your calendar. You're going to only check email during these times. You're only going to do these things during these times and see if you're able to accomplish it in that period. And if you can't, extend the time. And at a certain point, you'll see pretty close how much time things take. Um, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's taking you 12.1 hours or 10.3. At the end of the day, it's a big chunk of time. And what's important is, which problem to tackle first and the order that you fix the problems. you can't fix everything at the same time. So it's important that you just solve one problem at a time. What are the rules for email that save hours without upsetting people? Well, that RAD framework that I showed you and the AI agent. What are your rules for email? Okay. If a founder only has 30 minutes a day for real work, what should they do? Time audit where they're spending uh, the other stuff and figure out where the leak in the bucket is and solve the biggest component to that leak. How do you spot false productivity in high performers? Stop incentivizing people, or don't care if people work what hours, but be more goal oriented. What's the most underrated productivity tool, software, habit, or mindset? I think the underlying concept of optimize to find information, not send information. And I think prompt engineering and context engineering is really critical and not talked about enough. And the results, just like you have like crap data in, crap data out, it's bad tokens in, bad tokens out with this stuff. So really being mindful of what you're feeding into the AI, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I got a bad result with the AI. And I'm like, well, that's funny. I got a good result. Show me what you did. And like our prompts are very different. The context and documents and knowledge that we both fed it are very different. So you can have drastically different results depending on the prompt and the context that you're feeding. How do you evaluate ROI on someone's time, not just dollars? Um, are they achieving the goals and doing the stuff that you want them to do? And I think it starts with you figuring out what's the value of the project or the thing that you're asking them to do. And you have to start with having a good idea of like, what's that worth to you? Are they posting LinkedIn posts for you? Okay, what's a LinkedIn post worth? How do you What's your approach to building a team that runs without you? Well, if someone does something more than once and they don't like it, how can we automate it? So I'm always thinking, how can we never have to do that thing again? And sometimes you have to be looking a little bit more micro. So even if something's going to save just 5 minutes, if that's 5 minutes, like 12 times a day, that's an hour a day. So don't just kind of walk over and not pay attention to a 5-minute game. Think about how many cycles of that time savings happen in a year. If it's 5 minutes per cycle, 12 cycles a day, that's 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month, 240 a year. If 10 people are also gonna, doing that thing, you're talking 2,400 hours of labor savings. What's a question every founder should ask themselves at the start of their day? I guess, what's the most important thing I need to get done today? I think you should also be asking yourself, what can I cut? I think that your not to-do list is just as important, if not more important, than your to-do list. How do you decide between hiring more people and automating more work? It matters how hard it is to automate, but probably 9 out of 10 times you want to automate it, because the effort to hire people, train them, etc., unless it's such a complicated automation that is going to take months to build. But you could also make the argument that oftentimes I'm not building an automation from scratch. I'm some humans doing something. So we have already the work being done in a certain way, documented, but it's done by a human. And then we kind of just peel the onion one step at a time. And then it's like, okay, let's improve this one step. Great. Now let's improve the next step. So don't just think we need to either do all or nothing. You could do it in steps. So maybe you don't need to hire someone. You just take the person that's currently doing it and you slowly just try to automate one step at a time. How do you design accountability without micromanagement? I think you establish goals, like maybe it's a revenue goal, maybe it's whatever the goal is, and rather than telling them, "Hey, you need to do this thing," be more of a coach than a micromanager. It's like, how can I help you to achieve your goal? Do you have any questions? This is how I've been doing this. If it's helpful, you can do it too. At the end of the day, I'm not going to get in your way as long as you're hitting your goals. If you're not hitting your goals, I'm going to start stepping in more and telling you a bit more what to do. But my goal is for you to hit your goals. Okay, I think I got through all the questions in the chat. Hem, you there? All right, guys. Well, I hope this was helpful. I know we're a bit over time. If you need anything, feel free to reach out on social that I gave. And good luck with all of the stuff.